This is a video about making a UDF function, and it follows the video on the multiple sculpting issues, and I'm going to show you how to make a UDF, a user-defined function, to resolve the circular references. If you remember the last video, it was in project finance. How I could not call this advanced is kind of absurd. Okay, we discovered together, not really, we discovered that you could create, I think I'm going to have to change this, that you could use an LLCR for non-capture issues and a formula for the final captured issue, and you could resolve this issue of both hitting a DSCR and getting the right target levels. So I think where we kind of left off was this one. We computed an IRR. I didn't finish putting this. That's all right. I'll use this one. We computed an IRR, and we were able to get the DSCR to be what we wanted and the target debt amounts to get what we wanted, and we did that with changing interest rates and everything else. Now I'm going to move to how you do this if you want to do it with a circular reference. Okay. Now, so here is the issue. Let me find wrong file. This is my big file. It's really change project finance when we can put all these issues into one single file. Okay. What happened is, if you remember, I'm sorry if you watched the other video, if we change some of this to be 12% and 8 years, we had to run a circular reference, and the circular reference copy and pasted this in. Let's look at this circular reference, this horrible thing. We had to do a copy to computed. I put a status bar in that didn't work. I said, well, when the absolute value of these two things is less than 1, so we go round and around. We had a circular reference on the fixed debt, and we had a circular reference, I called it fixed and computed, and that was just on the debt IRR, and it all worked with this debt IRR. So I have to remember that the real rule is, number 1, compute debt IRR, number 2, put the LLCR, number 3, on all the non-capture issues, number 3, put a formula in for the captured issue. Now, when I did a circular reference resolve here, this IRR, okay, so let's do this correctly. This circular reference, UDF, gives me a whole lot of outputs, and I'm going to show you how I get there. And if I go and find all these fixed numbers I had to fix with the copy and paste, okay, and do the same thing with this fixed number, okay, I take this from our UDF, and now I can go and change this stuff 20%, and everything changes, and I'm still at my targets and all that, and the DSCR works. So I change this to 22%, change this interest rate to 3%, and it didn't change on this one. No, okay, whatever. I better change it all because I didn't put the LLCR on this one, and then it all still works. Change this to 45%. The IRR changes, the debt changes, and I don't. Okay, now let me show you some of the principles of this UDF. Here is the first one. If you notice, I put a whole lot of this output here. This was not just one thing, this was a whole bunch. Now, you don't remember. I remember when before spreadsheets, this was in maybe the 70s or the early 80s, before Lotus, before VisiCalc that invented everything and got no money. They were the innovators, okay, before Excel. You wrote a program with some do loops and some for loops and Fortran programs, and then you couldn't see anything. Excel, the brilliant thing with Excel is it allows you to see all the stuff. So if you're going to write a UDF, you still want to see everything in Excel. Now, to see everything in Excel, you make yourself a function, and then you press Shift Control Enter, like the transpose function, or I think there's one for the line est function, or the frequency function in Excel. There are a few different functions in Excel where you have to press Shift Control Enter. They're an array function. Now, to make an array function, you start like this. I always put option base 1 right at the very top. And the reason you put option base 1 is you want to start with 1 and not 0. And then you remember in everything, you put row first and column second. So you make a function and you call it a variant. I think you have to do this. And then I make a little variable. This could be named anything. I name it output. And this has got 10 rows and 100 columns. It could only use 1 row and 3 columns. It can use as much as you want. And then you put all your code in, and somewhere in your code, you have to define these things. Now, of course, they're not defined. And I put for row 1, column 1, det IRR, for row 2, column 1, det balance. And then somewhere, you have to take your whole function name and define it. That's kind of the rule of PDFs. And you define it as output, and you don't put any brackets around the output, and that creates an array function. So that's step 1. Okay, step 2 is to start working backwards. Okay, when you work backwards, okay, this is what we had last time, and this is what we had last time. You start defining the det IRR, and here's what the nice thing is. You can make the det IRR a worksheet function. You can get a whole lot of the worksheet functions, and this cash flow is an array variable. Do you see? It's an array. We defined it with 100. Okay, and then you keep working backwards. Oh, I got det IRR, but I don't have det cash flow. Let's get det cash flow. Now, det cash flow is the debt service, and we have to go around all the debt issues. In this case, I just used 3 debt issues, and we go around all the years or periods, and so it keeps adding the debt cash flow for each issue. It goes around the issues and accumulates all the debt cash flow, and this is exactly what we did right here. Okay, it's exactly what we did just up here. We needed to get the det IRR, and we're just working backwards through our whole model. And the tricky part of it, I guess, is if you haven't done this, I didn't mean to go here. If you haven't done this, you have to kind of work through a for loop and an array variable. And then we put the very first debt cash flow, this should be really saying 1, I think, as the debt balance. And then you continue to work backwards. And when you're continuing to work backwards, here, now let's continue to go here. I say, well, look, we're going to define this capture variable as 2. What you should do is kind of work around the maximums and find that. Now, I did that in a fancier place, okay? And then we say, well, let's find the the debt service of our captured debt, and I hope you can use this to understand, is the CFADS divided by debt service minus the non-captured. So you need to get the non-captured debt here. And the non-captured is CFADS. Now, to get the CFADS, we need to read that into the, we need to read that into the UDF function. And we also need to read the target DSCR in. I think I should have told you that on the last one. So as you go backwards, you start putting in the things you need. Now, I've got a new method to do this so you don't start cluttering up and you don't start having to read 1,000 different variables into here. This was an absolute key thing that Hetty gave me the inspiration to kind of do. Okay, and then on this one we compute the LLCR, and then you have to go backwards and compute the LLCR and keep going. Now, okay, finally, when you're finished, you can try to create an iteration loop. Now, I get really kind of lazy about this, okay? And when I do this, I typically just first do a for loop because I tend to make stupid mistakes around here. And sometimes you get into infinite loops. But essentially, you find the thing that caused the problem and you say, okay, let's go around and around till this doesn't equal 0 and make absolutely sure, this time we might want to have really added the debt IRR to this to make absolutely sure it really goes to 0. And then you have to find the previous time you computed the debt balance and make it equal. Now you go around and around, do all your stuff that's up in this last one, and then you compare, you say that, well, the difference is the last balance compared to this one. So the last balance was before you did it, and if you're going around and around and it's all converging, then this is equal to 0, and you can then stop. And I should have down here put a little thing that says loop, and I should have put a maybe iteration and check that this iteration doesn't get too big. It's a very, very good idea to make absolutely sure that you don't kind of get into an infinite loop. That's the danger, and then Excel crashes kind of when you do that. So that's just a little bit of really how to set this up. Now, when you set this up, when you're kind of finally finished, what you have is oh, I forgot to say something here too, I think. Well, let's look at the kind of final one, okay? I just made a little button. So I defined the tenor, the percentage of the debt, and then you go around and do all your calculations. There are your calculations. You get down to the debt IRR. It's a lot more complicated than the copy and paste. I know if it was easier than the copy and paste, everybody would be doing it. But it forces you to think through things. And the best news of all is that I put this in a program for you all ready to go. It's a little kind of a template program. Okay. Now, when you do this, all of these outputs, you can put all of these different outputs into the analysis so you can see exactly what's going on. And then you have your little UDF function, and it's got the debt cash flow, the debt balance. This is by issue 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is debt balance number 1, debt balance number 2. You can put all this stuff together. Here's the cash flow, the overall debt service. Maybe I should have put the DSCR here somewhere, whatever. And then once you have this, this is not affecting your model yet. It is not, can you understand it? It is not, you just redid the model. You just redid something. It has no effect on your model. Don't let some jerk-off model auditor tell you, oh no, you screwed up the model. It's totally separate. Can you understand that? It's totally separate. And then you can even just go through what you did in your little copy and paste and just you get that from this parallel model. You see how that works? And then you get the IRR. You also get that. Whatever you had to fix, you just take from the parallel model. Is that difficult for an auditor to see? In fact, what you've done is created the same model twice. This 57 better equal this 57 over here, I guess. And this debt balance better equal to this debt balance. Okay? And this non-captured debt issues, which is this key line up here, this better be the same. Okay? Enough. I think that's enough of this video.